For years, cross-functional sounded like a premium signal in white-collar work. It implied range, influence, and reach. Now it often means friction. The person who could align stakeholders, translate between teams, and keep initiatives moving across silos often looked unusually valuable. Enterprises are messy, and coordination used to be expensive, but that pricing logic is weakening. As systems lower friction and visibility improves, generic coordination is becoming less scarce, which means many cross-functional careers are becoming easier to reprice downward. The key mechanism is simple. Companies used to pay extra for people who could move information across disconnected functions because the organization itself was fragmented. Marketing did not see operations clearly. Finance did not trust product. Projects stalled because nobody had a clean view of dependencies. In that environment, the professional who could chase updates, align timelines, translate terminology, and hold the pieces together created value. Coordination was not overhead. It was a substitute for missing system coherence. That changes when tooling, workflow visibility, and standardized operating models reduce the amount of human translation required. Once more information becomes legible inside systems, the organization needs fewer people whose main value comes from asking, "Who owns this? Where is that blocked?" Or, "Can everyone align by Friday?" The work does not disappear completely, but it becomes easier to question why premium pay should sit inside roles built around meetings, follow-ups, status translation, and handoffs. Alignment starts looking generic. This is why cross-functional stops paying well before it stops sounding important. The language survives because companies still like collaboration, but the compensation logic changes underneath it. A role can remain praised while losing scarcity. The company keeps calling the work critical, but increasingly treats it as replaceable. Once systems provide more process visibility and workflow discipline, the organization starts seeing some forms of coordination not as leverage, but as evidence of structural redundancy. That creates a painful problem for many mid-career professionals. Their identity was built around being the connector. They are responsive, reliable, politically aware, and good at getting people in line without formal authority. Those skills still matter, but if the coordination burden is falling, the price of those skills falls with it. The enterprise no longer needs as many people to stitch together what software, dashboards, tighter taxonomies, and harder process rules are coordinating by default. There is also a budget reason this happens. Cross-functional coordination often sits inside SG&A, matrix management overhead, or program support structures that become visible during efficiency drives. When leaders look for savings, they ask which coordination layers are decision critical and which merely keep communication flowing. Communication flow alone is not always scarce enough to protect premium compensation. The firm may still need the work done, but not necessarily by a highly paid generalist whose role depends on smoothing routine dependencies. This is where many professionals misread the signal. They assume being near many teams automatically means strategic centrality. Sometimes it does, but often it only means you sit near friction. If the friction is reduced, your relevance can fall quickly. Being cross-functional is only defensible when the role governs meaningful trade-offs, resolves conflicts with real downside, or sits at a boundary where systems cannot settle the issue cleanly. Pure connector value weakens once the organization gains other ways to keep work aligned. The distinction that matters is between coordination as convenience and coordination as consequence. Convenience coordination is scheduling, chasing, bridging, translating, and smoothing. Consequence coordination is resolving trade-offs that affect budgets, risk, regulatory exposure, customer commitments, or priorities. The first category is increasingly generic. The second remains scarce because the company still needs a person who can decide which function gives way when alignment cannot be solved through tooling or standard workflow. One category can be repriced, the other usually cannot. That is why some cross-functional professionals will remain valuable while others get compressed. The durable group sits near decision rights. They do not just move information, they adjudicate conflicts. They decide what matters when functions disagree. They carry downside when an alignment choice creates cost or exposure. The vulnerable group looks busy and useful, but mainly sustains motion across processes the company is trying to make more self-executing. Their role rests on frictions the enterprise is investing to remove. This only holds under one condition. If coordination-heavy roles continue receiving strong raises, fast promotions, and rising centrality, even as system visibility improves, then this mechanism is overstated. But that is not the broad direction. Most large firms want fewer expensive connectors and more self-explanatory systems. They want work to move through governed processes rather than through personality-driven follow-up. The economic direction is toward thinner coordination layers, harder operating rules, and less premium pay for generic alignment labor. The exposure map is clear. The most vulnerable six-figure professionals are those whose main value lies in alignment without authority. They may run meetings well, keep stakeholders informed, and maintain momentum across multiple lanes. But if their role does not include material decision rights or consequence-bearing trade-offs, the enterprise can increasingly view them as costly connective tissue. They are useful enough to keep, but not scarce enough to command the premium once systems absorb more of the coordination load. The safer roles sit at harder boundaries. They manage trade-offs between functions when cost, risk, compliance, or commercial commitments are on the line. They define standards rather than just socializing them. They own escalation thresholds, not just meeting cadences. These positions are protected because they occupy a consequence-bearing junction where one side must eventually win, one budget must move, or one risk must be accepted. Authority persists where alignment turns into adjudication. That creates a useful test. Ask whether your role would still justify its pay if stakeholder communication became much easier, updates became self-serve, and workflow visibility improved dramatically. If the answer is no, your premium may depend on coordination friction rather than durable leverage. If the answer is yes, because your value sits in deciding trade-offs, absorbing escalations, and managing consequences, your position is stronger. The future premium will go less to people who connect functions and more to people who decide between them. That is the implication professionals should note. In a more instrumented enterprise, being broadly connected is not enough. The company is trying to make routine alignment cheap. Careers built on cross-functional convenience will increasingly feel busy but underpriced. Careers built on cross-functional consequence will remain harder to replace because the organization still needs someone to decide what happens when tools, workflows, and polite collaboration stop being sufficient. The connector premium is narrowing toward the places where consequence still outranks coordination.